The woman who opened the door was wearing a gray maid's uniform, complete with a white apron. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her hands were red and cracked from cleaning solutions. She looked 20 years older than she should have. It took me 3 full seconds to recognize my own mother. "Baby," Ruth whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "You're home." I stood there on the porch of the $1.5 million house I had bought 6 years ago, the house I had purchased specifically for my mother to live in comfort while I worked abroad, and I could not process what I was seeing. The front garden was immaculate. The windows sparkled. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But my mother was dressed like hired help in her own home. "Mom," I said slowly, my luggage still in my hands. "What are you wearing? Why are you dressed like that?" Before she could answer, a voice called from inside the house. A male voice I recognized immediately. "Ruth, who is at the door? Did the grocery delivery come already?" My husband Trevor appeared in the hallway behind my mother. He was wearing expensive loungewear I had never seen before, the kind of designer casual clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His hair was freshly cut. His skin glowed with the kind of health that came from regular spa treatments and personal trainers. He looked better than he had when I left 6 years ago. He froze when he saw me. "Naomi," he said. "Just my name. Nothing else." Then another woman appeared behind him. She was young, maybe 25, with long straight hair and perfect makeup. She was wearing a red silk robe that barely covered her thighs. She looked at me with mild curiosity, as if I were a stranger at the door, not the owner of the house she was standing in. "Who is this?" the woman asked Trevor. I felt something inside me crack. Not break, because breaking would have been too clean. This was more like a slow splitting, like ice forming in my chest and spreading through my entire body. "I'm Naomi," I said, my voice steady despite the cold rage building inside me. "I own this house. Who are you?" The woman, to her credit, had the decency to look uncomfortable. She pulled the robe tighter around herself and glanced at Trevor. "This is Simone," Trevor said, as if that explained everything. I looked at my mother. She would not meet my eyes. She was staring at the floor, her shoulders hunched, looking defeated in a way I had never seen before. My mother, who had raised me by herself after my father died, who had worked 3 jobs to put me through college, who had always stood tall no matter what life threw at her, was standing in her own home looking like a servant. "Mom," I said again, softer this time. "Please tell me what is happening here." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Come in, baby," she said quietly. "You must be tired from your flight." I stepped into the house I had bought with money I earned from 6 years of 70-hour work weeks in Dubai. 6 years of missing holidays and birthdays. 6 years of video calls and care packages. 6 years of depositing money into accounts and paying mortgages and making sure my mother would never have to work another day in her life. The interior had changed. When I left, I had furnished it simply but comfortably, focusing on quality pieces that would last. Now it looked like a showroom for expensive furniture stores. The couch was Italian leather. The coffee table was marble. Artwork I had never purchased hung on the walls. Everything screamed money, the kind of money I had sent home to ensure my mother's comfort, not to fund someone else's lifestyle. "Your mother keeps the house beautifully," Simone said, apparently deciding to make conversation. "She's very thorough." I turned to look at her. Really look at her. She was younger than me by at least 10 years. Pretty in a generic way. She had the slightly vacant look of someone who had never had to work hard for anything in her life. "My mother is not the housekeeper," I said. "She is the owner of this house. Or she should be." "Well, technically," Trevor started, but I cut him off with a look. "Get out," I said. "Excuse me?" He actually had the nerve to look offended. "Both of you. Get out of this house. Now." Trevor laughed. Actually laughed. "Naomi, be reasonable. You just got here. You're obviously tired and confused. Why don't you let Ruth make you some tea and we can all sit down and talk about this like adults?" "Let Ruth make me tea," I repeated slowly. "In the house I bought for her. While you and your girlfriend play house with my money." "It's not that simple," Trevor said. "Then make it simple," I said. "Explain to me why my mother is dressed like a maid in her own home. Explain to me why you are here at all. Explain to me who gave you permission to move into a property that belongs to me." "You did," he said. "You told me I could manage things while you were gone. You said I should make sure your mother was taken care of. I said you could check on her. I said you could help if she needed anything. I did not say you could move in. I did not say you could bring your girlfriend. I absolutely did not say you could turn my mother into your servant." My mother made a small sound. When I looked at her, she was crying silently, tears streaming down her face while she stood perfectly still in that horrible gray uniform. Something in me went very cold and very calm. I recognized this feeling. It was the same feeling I got when I was negotiating business deals, when I needed to be absolutely clear and absolutely in control. It was the feeling of knowing exactly what I needed to do and having no doubt about my ability to do it. "Mom," I said gently, "go pack a bag. Pack whatever you need for a few days. We're leaving." "Naomi, you can't just," Trevor started. "I can do whatever I want in my own house," I interrupted. "And right now I want my mother to pack a bag." "Mom, please. Go pack." Ruth looked at Trevor, then at me. For a moment I thought she might refuse. Then she nodded and hurried up the stairs. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Trevor asked. "Calling my lawyer," I said. "I've been sending money to my mother for 6 years. I have records of every transfer. I have the mortgage statements. I have the original purchase agreement. I want to know how you ended up living here like you own the place." "I'm your husband," Trevor said. "What's yours is mine. That's how marriage works." "That's not how my marriage works," I said. "We never combined our finances. Every asset I have is in my name only. This house is in my name only. The money I've been sending is for my mother, not for you. The bank accounts were in both our names," he said. "You added me as a joint holder before you left." I stopped dialing. "What?" "You added me to the accounts. You gave me power of attorney. You said I should handle things while you were overseas. I had done no such thing. I was absolutely certain of that. I had been very careful about keeping my finances separate. I had been very careful about everything." "I need to see documentation," I said. "It's all legal," Trevor said. "Simone can verify. She's a notary. She witnessed the papers." I looked at Simone. She would not meet my eyes either. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. No one answered. "How long?" I repeated, my voice dropping to something dangerous. "Have you two been living here? How long has my mother been cleaning up after you? How long have you been spending my money?" 2 years, my mother said from the top of the stairs. She was holding a small suitcase, the same one she had owned since I was a child. "They moved in 2 years ago. He said you told him to manage the property. He said you approved everything." 2 years. 730 days. My mother had been living like a servant in her own home for 730 days. I finished dialing my lawyer's number. It was 11 at night in Dubai, which meant it was early evening here. Attorney Bradford picked up on the third ring. "This is Naomi Fletcher," I said. "I need you to meet me first thing tomorrow morning. I'm back in the country and I have a legal situation that requires immediate attention." I listened to his response, my eyes never leaving Trevor's face. "Yes," I said. "It involves fraud. Possibly forgery. Definitely theft. And I want my husband out of my property before the end of the week." Trevor's confident expression finally cracked. "You can't do this," he said. "Watch me," I replied. I took my mother's suitcase from her hand and walked to the door. She followed me without looking back. As we stepped outside into the cool evening air, I turned back one last time. "Don't get comfortable," I said to Trevor and Simone. "This is my house. You're just squatters. And I'm very good at removing obstacles." I closed the door on his protest and helped my mother into the car I had rented at the airport. She was shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have called you. I should have told you what was happening." "This is not your fault," I said firmly. "None of this is your fault. But I need you to tell me everything. I need to know exactly what he did." She nodded, wiping her eyes. As I drove away from the house I had purchased with my own hard-earned money, the house that was supposed to be my mother's sanctuary, I made a promise to myself. Trevor had made a mistake. He had underestimated me. He thought I would be too tired, too confused, too overwhelmed to fight back. He was wrong. I had spent 6 years building a career in one of the most competitive business environments in the world. I had negotiated with millionaires and billionaires. I had learned to be ruthless when necessary, strategic always, and patient when patience served me. Trevor had no idea what he had just started. But he was about to find out. Justice was coming. And I was bringing it personally. The hotel suite I booked was clean and comfortable, nothing like the house I had left behind but sufficient for our needs. My mother sat on the edge of one of the double beds, still wearing that gray uniform. I wanted to burn it. "Let's get you out of those clothes," I said, opening her suitcase. Inside were more Maid uniforms, all neatly folded. 3 gray dresses, white aprons, sensible black shoes. Nothing else. No regular clothes. No personal items beyond a toothbrush and some basic toiletries. My hands started shaking. Mom, where are your other clothes? Where are the things I sent you? She looked down at her lap. He sold them. Trevor said they were taking up too much space. He had a consignment store come and take everything. The jewelry you sent for my birthday. The designer handbags. The nice dresses. Everything. I sat down next to her, trying to control my breathing. Trying not to let the rage show because my mother needed me to be calm right now. Start from the beginning, I said. Tell me everything. Ruth took a deep breath. It started about 2 years ago. You had been gone for 4 years at that point. Trevor would visit sometimes like you asked him to. Just checking in, making sure I was okay. He was always very polite. Very helpful. And then one day he showed up with suitcases. He said you had called him. He said you were worried about me being alone in such a big house. He said you wanted him to stay there and keep me company. He showed me texts from your phone number. Messages saying he should move in and manage the property. I never sent those texts. I know that now, she said softly. But I believed him then. Why wouldn't I? He was your husband. I thought you two had talked about it. When did Simone arrive? About 6 months later. Trevor said she was his business partner. He said they were working on real estate investments together and it made sense for her to stay there too. He put her in one of the guest rooms. But they're together now. When did that happen? My mother's face flushed with shame. I don't think it happened, baby. I think they were always together. I think I was just too trusting to see it. Within a few months, she had moved into the master bedroom with him. Your old bedroom. The master bedroom. The room I had carefully decorated before I left. The room where I had imagined coming home to someday. And the maid uniform? I asked. That came gradually. First, Trevor asked if I could help out around the house. Just small things, he said. Washing some dishes. Doing some laundry. He said since I was living there for free, it was only fair to contribute. I didn't mind at first. It gave me something to do. But you weren't living there for free. I was paying the mortgage. I was sending money every month. I didn't know that, Ruth said. Trevor told me you had stopped sending money. He said you were having financial problems at work. He said you couldn't afford to support me anymore and that's why he had to move in, to help with the expenses. The lies were so calculated. So deliberate. Every piece designed to manipulate and control. What happened to the money I was sending? He was taking it. Every transfer you made, he was intercepting. He had set up some kind of redirect on the accounts. I didn't know about any of it until you showed up tonight. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The international transfers I had been making religiously every month for 6 years. $12,000 a year. $72,000 total. All of it marked as received. The uniforms? I prompted gently. About a year ago, Trevor said they were hiring a housekeeper. He said the house was too big for them to maintain themselves. The next day, this woman showed up with cleaning supplies and uniforms. She worked for 2 weeks. Then one morning, Trevor told me she had quit. He said we couldn't afford to hire someone else. He said I would need to take over her duties. And you agreed? What choice did I have? I was living in his house, eating his food. Or that's what I thought. He made me feel like I owed him something. Like I was a burden. So I put on the uniform and I cleaned. The image of my proud, strong mother scrubbing toilets for the man who was supposed to be my husband made me feel physically ill. Did he pay you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No. He said room and board was my payment. He said I should be grateful he was taking care of me when my own daughter had abandoned me. I never abandoned you. I know. But he showed me things. Emails that looked like they were from you. Messages saying you were too busy to call. Screenshots of conversations where you supposedly said you didn't want to deal with me anymore. I thought you had moved on with your life in Dubai and forgotten about me. Mom? I took her hand. I called you every Sunday for 6 years. Every single Sunday. I know. But for the last 2 years, Trevor would answer your calls. He would talk to you for a few minutes, then tell me you didn't have time to speak with me. He always had an excuse. You were in a meeting. You were tired. You were about to board a flight. I heard your voice sometimes asking for me, but he would always hang up before I could get to the phone. I remembered those calls. So many times I had asked to speak with my mother, only to have Trevor tell me she was sleeping or out shopping or in the bathroom. He always had a reason. And like a fool I had believed him. Why didn't you call me yourself? Why didn't you reach out? He took my phone. He said it was too old and he would get me a new one, but he never did. The only phone in the house was his. And he monitored everything. Every call. Every message. I couldn't contact anyone without him knowing. She was essentially a prisoner. In the house I had bought to give her freedom and security, Trevor had turned her into a prisoner. Did he hurt you? Physically? No. He never raised a hand to me. But he didn't have to. He controlled everything else. What I ate. When I could leave the house. Who I could talk to. He told your aunts and cousins that you didn't want them visiting anymore. He told my church that I had decided to stop attending. He isolated me completely. What about Simone? What was her role in all this? She enjoyed it, Ruth said bitterly. She liked having someone to order around. She would leave messes deliberately just so I would have to clean them up. She would call me at all hours to bring her tea or snacks. She treated me like I was actually hired help. And Trevor let her. He encouraged it. I stood up and walked to the window looking out at the city lights. My city. The place I had grown up. The place I had left to build a better life for both of us. And while I was gone, working myself to exhaustion, Trevor had been here stealing everything I had built. I need to know about the paperwork, I said. Trevor claims I gave him power of attorney. That I added him to my accounts. Do you know anything about that? I saw him with papers once. This was maybe 3 years ago, right after he first moved in. He was at the kitchen table with Simone, and they were looking at documents. When I came in they covered them up quickly. But I saw your name on them. Your signature. I assumed you had signed them before you left. I didn't. Which means he forged them. Can you prove that? I'm going to try. I turned back to face her. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with my lawyer. Attorney Bradford has handled all my real estate deals. He has copies of every document I've ever actually signed. If Trevor forged my signature, we'll be able to prove it. What if you can't? What if his papers look legitimate? Then we'll find another way. Mom, I promise you, Trevor is not going to get away with this. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how long it takes. He's going to pay for what he did to you. My mother started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. I prayed you would come home, she whispered. Every day for 2 years I prayed you would come back and see what was happening. I was so afraid you never would. I'm here now, I said, sitting back down and putting my arm around her. And I'm not going anywhere until this is fixed. We sat like that for a long time, my mother crying softly while I held her. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. People were having dinner, watching television, living their ordinary lives. None of them knew that my entire world had just been turned inside out. Eventually Ruth fell asleep. I helped her out of that horrible uniform and into one of the hotel robes. I tucked her into bed like she used to tuck me in when I was a child. Then I sat in the chair by the window with my laptop and started going through my financial records. Every bank statement from the past 6 years. Every transfer. Every account. I traced every dollar I had earned and where it had gone. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. Money going into accounts that I had thought were solely in my name. Money being withdrawn in amounts I had never authorized. Purchases I had never made. Trevor had been stealing from me systematically for at least 3 years. Maybe longer. The amounts had started small, a few hundred here and there. But in the last year the withdrawals had gotten bolder. Larger. 10,000. 20,000. 50,000 at once. I calculated the total and felt my stomach drop. Over $200,000. Gone. Spent on furniture and clothes and cars and vacations. Spent maintaining a lifestyle he had no right to while my mother cleaned his toilets. At 2 a.m. I finally closed the laptop. I was too angry to sleep but too exhausted to keep working. Instead, I did what I always did when I needed to think clearly. I made a list. Step 1. Meet with Attorney Bradford. Get legal advice. Determine what laws Trevor had broken and what recourse I had. Step 2. Gather evidence. Bank statements. Property records. Anything that showed Trevor's fraud. Step 3. Get him out of my house. Legally, forcibly, whatever it took. Step 4. Get my money back. Every cent he had stolen. Step 5. Make sure he could never do this to anyone else again. I looked at my list for a long time. Then I added one more item. Step 6. Rebuild. Create something better than what Trevor had destroyed. Revenge would be satisfying. But revenge alone would not give my mother back the 2 years Trevor had stolen from her. It would not restore her dignity. It would not heal the damage he had done. I needed to do more than destroy him. I needed to build something so strong, so secure, that nothing like this could ever happen again. My phone buzzed with an email. Attorney Bradford, responding to my urgent message. I've cleared my morning schedule. Come to my office at 9 a.m. Bring all documentation you have. We'll figure this out together. I looked over at my mother, sleeping peacefully for probably the first time in months. Her face was relaxed. The tension that had lined her features earlier was gone. Trevor had no idea what he had started. He thought he had won. He thought he had gotten away with it. He had spent 2 years playing house with my money, treating my mother like a servant, living like he owned something he had no right to. But those 2 years were about to cost him everything. I opened a new note on my phone and started writing down everything my mother had told me. Every detail. Every conversation. Every instance of manipulation and control. I would need all of it for the legal battle ahead. The sun was starting to rise when I finally allowed myself to close my eyes. Tomorrow would be the first day of getting my life back. Of getting justice for my mother. And I was ready. Attorney Bradford's office was in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. The decor was understated but expensive, the kind of place that radiated competence and success. I had chosen him 6 years ago specifically because of his reputation for handling complex property disputes. Now I was grateful for that decision. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When his secretary showed me into his office, he stood and shook my hand firmly. "Miss Fletcher. It's good to see you again, though I wish it were under better circumstances." I had left my mother at the hotel, still sleeping. She needed rest more than she needed to relive the details of her ordeal again so soon. "Thank you for making time on short notice," I said, taking the seat across from his desk. "You mentioned fraud and forgery. Tell me everything." I laid it out for him methodically. The house I had purchased. The arrangement for my mother to live there. Trevor's supposed role in checking on her. What I had found when I returned. The uniforms. The girlfriend. The lifestyle they had been funding with my money. Bradford listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Let's start with the property itself. The house is in your name only." "Yes. I purchased it before I left for Dubai. The mortgage is in my name. All payments have been made from my account." "And your husband never contributed to the purchase or upkeep?" "Not a cent." Trevor was unemployed when we got married. He was supposedly looking for work in finance, but that never materialized. I supported both of us during our marriage. "But you didn't divorce before you left for Dubai?" "No. It seemed simpler to stay married. We weren't having problems at that point. Or so I thought. He was supportive of my career move. He said he would hold down the fort while I was gone." Bradford made another note. "Did you give him any legal authority? Power of attorney? Access to your accounts?" "Absolutely not. I was very careful about that. All my accounts were in my name only. I never added him as a joint holder. I never gave him signing authority." "But he claims you did." "He says he has documents showing I gave him power of attorney and added him to my accounts. He says his girlfriend witnessed the papers as a notary." "That's convenient," Bradford said dryly. "Do you have any of the original paperwork for your accounts? The signature cards? The initial agreements?" I pulled out a folder I had grabbed from my hotel room safe. "I have everything. Every document I ever signed regarding my property and finances. I keep copies of everything." Bradford took the folder and began going through it carefully. He spent several minutes examining my signature on various documents, comparing them against each other. "Your signature is consistent across all of these," he said. "Very distinctive. That will make proving forgery easier if it comes to that. What do I need to do?" "First, we need to secure your assets immediately. I want you to go to your bank today and inform them of potential fraud. Have them freeze any accounts that Trevor has access to. Request copies of any documents he used to gain that access. If he forged your signature, the bank will have the evidence." "What about the house?" "The house is yours. You have clear title. But removing him from the property will require proper legal procedure. You can't just change the locks and force him out, even though it's your house. That could open you to liability." "So what do I do?" "We file for immediate possession based on the fact that he has no legal right to be there. We also file a restraining order if necessary. Given what you've told me about how he treated your mother, we may have grounds for that. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Take photos of the house. The furniture he bought with your money. The condition your mother was living in. Everything." "I can do that. We also need to file a police report. What Trevor did constitutes identity theft at minimum, possibly more serious fraud charges. The criminal aspect will strengthen our civil case." "Will they investigate?" "If we present them with enough evidence, yes. Financial crimes are taken seriously, especially when they involve forgery and theft of this magnitude. Bradford pulled out a calculator and started tallying numbers based on the figures I had given him. Based on what you've told me, Trevor has stolen over $200,000 from you. That's a felony. Add in the forged documents, the identity theft, and the emotional abuse of your mother, and we're looking at significant criminal liability. How long will all of this take? That depends on how much evidence we can gather and how cooperative Trevor decides to be. If he fights it, we could be looking at months. Maybe longer. I don't care how long it takes, I said. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Bradford smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. Now let's talk strategy. We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail. Bradford explained the various legal avenues available. He outlined what I needed to do in what order. He gave me a list of documents to collect and people to contact. One more thing, he said as I was preparing to leave. You need to be prepared for this to get ugly. Trevor will likely try to paint himself as the victim. He'll claim you abandoned him. That you weren't supporting him financially. That he was entitled to use your assets because you're married. We'll prove him wrong. We will. But it won't be pleasant. These cases rarely are. He may try to drag your reputation through the mud. He may make accusations about you. You need to be ready for that. I am, I said. I've dealt with difficult business negotiations. I can handle this. This is different from business. This is personal. It will hurt in ways business deals don't. He hurt my mother. He stole from me. He lied to me for years. Whatever he throws at me can't be worse than what he's already done. Bradford nodded. Then let's get to work. I left his office with a clear plan and a renewed sense of purpose. My first stop was the bank. The branch manager was a woman named Patricia who had helped me set up my accounts 6 years ago. She remembered me immediately. Miss Fletcher, welcome back. What can I help you with today? I need to report fraud on my accounts. Her professional smile faltered. I see. Come into my office, please. In the privacy of her office, I explained the situation. Patricia's expression grew increasingly concerned as I spoke. You're saying your husband has been accessing your accounts without authorization? Yes. He claims I gave him permission and added him as a joint holder. I did not. Let me pull up your account history. She typed rapidly on her computer, her frown deepening. I'm seeing several changes made to your accounts about 3 years ago. Trevor Fletcher was added as a joint holder on your primary checking and savings accounts. There's also a power of attorney on file giving him full authority over your finances. I never authorized those changes. The documents were submitted in person. They're signed by you and notarized. They're forged. I need to see those documents. Patricia printed out copies of the paperwork. I studied the signatures carefully. They looked like mine, close enough to pass casual inspection. But I could see the differences. The way certain letters were formed. The pressure of the pen. These were not my signatures. I need you to freeze all accounts immediately, I said. And I need copies of everything related to these changes. I can freeze the accounts, but I'll need to file a formal fraud report. This will trigger an investigation. Good. That's exactly what I want. Patricia made the necessary calls and filled out the required forms. She assured me that the accounts would be frozen within the hour and that Trevor would no longer have access. What about the money that's already been taken? I asked. That will be part of the investigation. If we determine that fraud occurred, the bank may reimburse you for some or all of the losses. But I can't make any promises about the timeline or the outcome. I understand. I left the bank with a thick folder of documents and a growing sense of satisfaction. Trevor's access to my money was cut off. Now for the house. I called Candace from my car. My best friend since college had flown in that morning at my request. She was waiting at the hotel with my mother. How did it go? She asked. We're making progress. I'm heading to the house now to document everything. Can you keep an eye on Mom? Of course. She's doing better today. We had breakfast together and she's been telling me stories about you as a kid. That's good. Let her talk. She needs to remember that she has a life outside of what Trevor put her through. Naomi, are you sure you want to go back there alone? What if Trevor gets aggressive? He won't. He's a coward. Cowards don't get physical when they realize they're losing control. They try to manipulate and negotiate. Still, be careful. I will. I drove to the house mid-afternoon when I knew Trevor and Simone would likely be there. I wanted them to see me walking through what was mine, documenting what they had stolen. Sure enough, Trevor's car was in the driveway. An expensive luxury sedan I had never seen before. I checked the registration online and found it was leased in his name using my credit. Another theft to add to the list. I walked up to the front door and used my key. It still worked. Trevor hadn't changed the locks yet. He was in the living room, lounging on that expensive Italian leather couch. Simone was there too, painting her nails. They both looked up in surprise when I entered. "You can't just walk in here," Trevor said, standing up. "Actually, I can. It's my house. We talked about this. I have legal rights as your husband. You have a legal obligation to not commit fraud. Your rights ended when you forged my signature." His face paled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The bank does. I spent the morning with them. They've frozen all accounts. You no longer have access to my money." Simone stopped painting her nails. "Trevor? It's fine," he said, though his voice was tight. "She's bluffing." "Try to access the accounts," I said. "Go ahead. You'll find you can't." Trevor pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. I watched his expression change as he realized I was telling the truth. "You can't do this," he said. "I already did. Now, I'm here to document everything you've bought with my money. Every piece of furniture. Every decoration. Every item in this house that wasn't here when I left. My lawyer needs a complete inventory for the lawsuit." "Lawsuit?" Simone stood up. "Trevor, you said this was all legal." "It is legal," he insisted, but he was sweating now. "Naomi, we should talk about this reasonably. Without lawyers. We can work something out." "No," I said simply. "We can't. You stole from me. You abused my mother. You forged legal documents. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a crime." I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. The living room. The furniture. The artwork. I moved through the house methodically, cataloging everything. In the master bedroom, I found my mother's old room had been converted into a storage space for Simone's clothes. Racks of designer dresses. Shelves of expensive shoes. All bought with my money. "You need to leave," Trevor said, following me. "You're making Simone uncomfortable." "Simone can leave anytime she wants. In fact, I recommend it. When the police get involved, which they will, she's going to be charged as an accessory." "Police?" Simone's voice was shrill now. "Trevor, you said there wouldn't be any problems." "There won't be," he said, but he didn't sound confident anymore. I continued my documentation. The home office where Trevor had apparently been running his business. The garage where he kept expensive tools and sports equipment. The wine cellar he had installed without my knowledge. Every photo. Every receipt I could find. Every piece of evidence of the life he had built with my stolen money. "How long did you think you could get away with this?" I asked him. "I wasn't getting away with anything. This is my house too. Community property. I'm entitled to half of everything." "Wrong. This house was purchased before you had any claim to my assets. And even if it wasn't, forging documents and stealing money isn't community property. It's theft." I finished my documentation and headed for the door. Trevor followed me. "Naomi, wait. Let's talk about this. We can work something out. You don't have to involve lawyers and police. We're still married. We can fix this." "No," I said, turning to face him. "We can't. You know why? Because I don't want to. You hurt my mother. You stole from me. You lied to me for years. There's nothing to fix. There's only justice to be served." "I'll fight this," he said. "I'll drag you through court for years. I'll make this so expensive and time-consuming that you'll wish you'd just let it go." "Try it," I said. "I have more money than you. Better lawyers than you. And most importantly, I have the truth on my side. You're going to lose, Trevor. The only question is how badly." I left him standing in the doorway of the house he would soon lose. As I drove away, I called Bradford again. "I have the documentation," I said. "Photos of everything. I also have confirmation from the bank that the documents were forged." "Good. I'll start drafting the civil suit. I'm also going to coordinate with the district attorney's office about criminal charges." "How soon can we move on the house?" "I'll file for emergency possession first thing tomorrow morning. If the judge agrees, and I think he will given the circumstances, Trevor will have to vacate within days." "Perfect. Naomi, one more thing. You're doing great so far. You're staying calm, staying focused, staying legal. Keep that up. Don't let him provoke you into doing something rash." "I won't. I'm too angry to be rash. I'm angry enough to be methodical." Bradford chuckled. "That's exactly the right attitude. I'll call you tomorrow with updates." I hung up and drove back to the hotel. My mother and Candace were in the sitting area, having tea. Ruth looked better today. Some color had returned to her face. She was wearing clothes I had bought her that morning, simple but nice. Comfortable. Her own. How did it go? She asked. We're winning, I said. And we're going to keep winning. For the first time since I had returned home, I allowed myself to feel hopeful. Trevor had built his house of cards with my stolen money. Now I was going to knock it down one piece at a time. And I was going to enjoy every minute of it. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 days later. Attorney Bradford had moved fast, filing multiple motions at once. Immediate possession of the property. Restraining order. Injunction against Trevor accessing any more of my assets. The judge had agreed to hear everything together given the severity of the allegations. I dressed carefully that morning. A navy blue suit, professional but not flashy. Simple jewelry. Hair pulled back. I wanted to look like someone who took this seriously, someone who was credible and competent. Someone who could not be easily dismissed. My mother and Candace came with me for support. Ruth was nervous, fidgeting with her purse as we sat in the courthouse waiting room. What if the judge doesn't believe us? She asked. The judge will believe the evidence, I said. And we have plenty of that. Attorney Bradford arrived carrying 2 briefcases full of documents. He looked confident, which made me feel better. The bank sent over their fraud investigation findings this morning, he told me. Their handwriting expert confirmed that the signatures on the power of attorney and account changes don't match your known signatures. They're prepared to testify if necessary. What about Trevor? Will he be here? He's required to be here. The court sent him notice of the hearing. If he doesn't show up, that will work in our favor. But Trevor did show up. He arrived 15 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to begin, wearing a suit I had never seen before. Expensive. Perfectly tailored. Simone was with him, dressed in a red designer dress that probably cost more than my mother had spent on clothes in the past 2 years. They sat on the opposite side of the waiting room. Trevor kept glancing at me, but I refused to make eye contact. Let him wonder what I was thinking. Let him worry. When they called our case, we all filed into the courtroom. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses. Judge Morrison, according to the nameplate on her bench. She looked at the thick stack of filings in front of her and sighed. This is quite a mess you've brought me, she said. Let's try to sort through it efficiently. Attorney Bradford, you're representing Ms. Fletcher? Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Fletcher, do you have representation? Trevor stood. I'm representing myself, Your Honor. Bradford and I exchanged a glance. That was either very stupid or very arrogant. Probably both. Very well, Judge Morrison said. Ms. Fletcher, you're seeking immediate possession of a property located at 1847 Maple Drive. Can you establish your ownership of this property? Bradford stood. Yes, Your Honor. He submitted the deed, the mortgage documents, the purchase agreement. All clearly showing that I was the sole owner of the property. And Mr. Fletcher, you're currently residing at this property? Yes, Your Honor. It's my marital home. Ms. Fletcher and I are married, which gives me legal rights to reside there. Normally, yes, Judge Morrison said. But Ms. Fletcher claims you obtained access to the property through fraud. She also alleges that you've been engaging in financial crimes. Those are serious accusations. They're false accusations, Your Honor. My wife is upset because I've been managing our assets while she was working overseas. She's confused about the arrangements we made. I'm not confused, I said. Judge Morrison looked at me. Miss Fletcher, you'll have a chance to testify. Mr. Fletcher, continue. My wife gave me power of attorney before she left for Dubai 6 years ago. She added me to her bank accounts. She told me to manage the property and make sure her mother was taken care of. That's exactly what I did. Your Honor, Bradford interjected. We have evidence that the power of attorney Mr. Fletcher is referring to was forged. The bank has confirmed that the signatures don't match Miss Fletcher's known signature. May I see this power of attorney? Judge Morrison asked. Trevor handed over a document. Bradford provided copies of my legitimate signatures for comparison. The judge studied them carefully, her expression growing more stern. Mr. Fletcher, these signatures do look quite different. Signatures vary, Your Honor. Especially when signing different types of documents. Not this much they don't. Miss Fletcher, when did you allegedly sign this power of attorney? I didn't sign it at all, Your Honor. I never gave my husband power of attorney. I never added him to my bank accounts. I was very careful to keep my finances separate. Why would you do that if you trusted your husband? Because I wanted to protect the assets I was working hard to build. I had specific plans for that money, including purchasing a home for my mother. Adding anyone else to my accounts would have complicated those plans. Your Honor, Trevor said, My wife is trying to rewrite history. She gave me full authority to manage things while she was gone. Now she's regretting it and trying to claim fraud. Then you won't mind if we have a handwriting expert examine these documents more closely, Judge Morrison said. Trevor's confident expression flickered. That seems unnecessary. I disagree. I'm ordering a formal handwriting analysis. In the meantime, let's discuss the condition in which Miss Fletcher found the property when she returned. Miss Fletcher, you claim your mother was being treated as a servant? Yes, Your Honor. I gestured to Ruth. My mother was living in the house wearing a maid's uniform, cleaning and cooking for my husband and his girlfriend. Girlfriend? Judge Morrison looked at Trevor. You're living with another woman in the marital home? Simone is my business partner, Trevor said quickly. Your business partner who sleeps in your bedroom? I asked. Order, Judge Morrison said, but she was looking at Trevor with clear disapproval. Mr. Fletcher, are you in a relationship with this woman? That's not relevant to this case, Your Honor. Actually, it is. If you're living with another woman in a home that doesn't belong to you, while forcing your mother-in-law to work as unpaid domestic help, that speaks to your character and your credibility. I didn't force anyone to do anything. Ruth volunteered to help around the house. Your Honor, Bradford said. We have testimony from Ruth Fletcher describing systematic abuse and control. Mr. Fletcher isolated her from friends and family. He took her phone. He intercepted communications from her daughter. He created a situation where she felt she had no choice but to comply with his demands. These are lies, Trevor said, his voice rising. Ruth is elderly. She's confused. She doesn't remember things correctly. I remember perfectly well, Ruth said quietly from her seat. You told me my daughter had abandoned me. You made me feel worthless. You treated me like a servant in my own home. Judge Morrison held up a hand. We're going to address all of this properly. But first, I need to make a determination about the immediate possession issue. Miss Fletcher, why do you need emergency possession? Why can't this wait for a full hearing? Because every day my husband remains in that house, he's continuing to benefit from stolen property. He bought furniture and decorations with my money. He's living a lifestyle he has no right to. And I want my mother to be able to return to her home without fear. Mr. Fletcher, do you have any legal basis for remaining in the property? Community property laws, Your Honor. I'm entitled to half of all marital assets. That property was purchased before your marriage gave you any claim to it. And even if it was community property, that doesn't give you the right to reside there exclusively while preventing the actual owner from doing so. I'm granting Miss Fletcher's motion for immediate possession. Trevor's face went red. You can't do that. I just did. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. You may take your personal belongings but nothing else. Any property you purchased with Miss Fletcher's money remains in the house. This is outrageous, Trevor sputtered. What's outrageous is that you apparently forged legal documents and stole over $200,000 from your wife. Which brings me to the restraining order request. Miss Fletcher, what concerns do you have about Mr. Fletcher's behavior? I'm concerned he'll try to take revenge for losing access to my money. I'm concerned he'll try to intimidate my mother. I want legal protection. Granted. Mr. Fletcher, you are to have no contact with Miss Fletcher or her mother except through attorneys. You are not to come within 500 feet of either of them. You are not to contact them by phone, email, or any other means. Do you understand? This is ridiculous, Trevor said. You're taking her word over mine. I'm taking the evidence over your denials. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Fletcher, you have 48 hours. If you're not out of that house by then, the sheriff will remove you. Judge Morrison gathered her papers and left the bench. Trevor stood there looking stunned. Simone was crying quietly next to him. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Not happiness exactly. Just a sense that justice was beginning to work. That went well, Bradford said as we left the courtroom. Better than well, I said. He's out. He'll appeal, Bradford warned. He'll try every legal maneuver he can think of. This isn't over. I know. But it's a start. That evening, Bradford arranged for a locksmith to meet us at the house. We arrived at 6 p.m. right on schedule. Trevor's car was still in the driveway. The locksmith, a cheerful man named George, got to work immediately. He changed every lock on every door. Front door, back door, garage door, side entrance. New keys. New codes. Complete security. Trevor came outside while George was working. You can't do this, he said. Actually, I can, I replied. The judge gave me possession. You have 48 hours to collect your things and leave. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. This is my home. No, I said firmly. This was never your home. This was my investment. My property. You were just squatting here. Simone appeared behind him, carrying a suitcase. She looked scared. Trevor, let's just go, she said. We'll figure something out. No. This is my house. I'm not leaving. You heard the judge, Bradford said. You have 48 hours. If you're not gone by then, the sheriff will physically remove you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Trevor looked at me with pure hatred. You're going to regret this. Is that a threat? Bradford pulled out his phone. Because I'm recording this conversation, and any threats you make will be reported to the judge. Trevor's mouth snapped shut. 48 hours, I repeated. And Trevor? Take only what's yours. If I find out you've stolen anything else, I'll add it to the charges. We left him standing there. As we drove away, I felt my mother's hand slip into mine. You did it, she said softly. You got our house back. Not yet, I said. But we will. Soon. The next 2 days were tense. I stayed at the hotel, afraid that if I was at the house Trevor might do something stupid. Bradford had advised patience, and I was learning that patience was part of the revenge process. On the afternoon of the second day, my phone rang. It was the sheriff's office. Miss Fletcher? This is Deputy Williams. We're at your property to ensure Mr. Fletcher's compliance with the court order. He's currently loading his belongings into a moving truck. Is he cooperating? Yes, ma'am. He's not happy about it, but he's not causing trouble either. We'll stay until he's completely off the premises. Thank you, Deputy. An hour later, I got another call. Property is clear, Miss Fletcher. You can return whenever you're ready. I hung up and looked at my mother and Candace. He's gone, I said. Ruth started crying. Candace hugged her. Let's go home, Mom, I said. We drove to the house together. The front lawn was a mess where the moving truck had torn up the grass. But the house itself was intact. I used my new key to open the front door. Inside, the furniture Trevor had bought was still there. The Italian leather couch. The marble coffee table. The expensive artwork. All of it evidence of theft, but also all of it now mine. My mother walked through the room slowly, touching things carefully as if she couldn't quite believe it was real. I'm home, she whispered. I'm really home. You're home, I confirmed. And no one is ever going to take this away from you again. That night, we ordered pizza and ate it sitting on Trevor's expensive couch. We laughed and talked and made plans. Plans for renovating. Plans for redecorating. Plans for making this house feel like ours again, not like something Trevor had stolen. As I was falling asleep in my old bedroom, my phone buzzed with a text from Bradford. Bank investigation is complete. They're filing criminal charges against Trevor. Fraud, forgery, identity theft. The DA wants to talk to you tomorrow. I smiled in the darkness. Justice was coming. And it was coming fast. The district attorney's office was in a government building downtown, all concrete and glass with security checkpoints at every entrance. I went through the metal detectors carrying a briefcase full of evidence Bradford had prepared for me. My mother had wanted to come, but I convinced her to rest. This part didn't require her reliving the trauma again. Assistant District Attorney Patricia Greenwood was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She shook my hand firmly and gestured to a chair across from her desk. Thank you for coming in, Miss Fletcher. I've reviewed the materials your attorney sent over. This is one of the more clear-cut fraud cases I've seen in a while. I'm glad you see it that way, I said. I was worried it might be dismissed as a civil matter. Oh, it's definitely criminal. Your husband, your soon-to-be ex-husband, committed multiple felonies. Forgery. Identity theft. Wire fraud. Grand theft. We're looking at potentially 10 to 15 years if he's convicted on all counts. The number shocked me. I had wanted justice, but hearing it laid out so starkly made it real. Will it go to trial? That depends on whether Mr. Fletcher decides to take a plea deal. Most defendants in cases this solid end up pleading out. Fighting it in court would be expensive and likely futile given the evidence. But some people are too stubborn or too delusional to accept reality. Trevor is both of those things, I said. ADA Greenwood smiled slightly. So I've gathered. Now, I need to take your formal statement. Walk me through everything from the beginning. I spent the next 2 hours detailing my relationship with Trevor. How we met. How he had always seemed interested in my financial success more than in me as a person, but I had been too focused on my career to notice. How he had been supportive of my move to Dubai, perhaps too supportive in retrospect. How I had been careful about keeping our finances separate. You said you never combined bank accounts or gave him power of attorney, Ada Greenwood said. Why was that? I grew up watching my mother struggle financially after my father died. I learned early that you can't rely on anyone else to protect your financial security. I loved Trevor, or thought I did, but I wasn't naive enough to think love meant giving someone complete access to everything I had earned. Smart. That kind of caution is rare. It should be more common, I said. Especially for women. We're taught that not trusting your partner with money means you don't really love them. That's nonsense. Trust should be earned, and financial trust takes time. Ada Greenwood nodded. I'm going to need you to identify these signatures. She laid out copies of the forged documents. The power of attorney. The bank account changes. Various other papers Trevor had used to steal my identity. I examined each one carefully. None of these are my actual signatures. They're close, but look at the F in Fletcher. Mine has a distinctive loop at the top. These don't. And the N in Naomi, mine always has a little tail at the bottom. These are too round. The bank's handwriting expert said the same thing. We also pulled surveillance footage from the bank branch where these documents were submitted. Want to guess who's on the tape? Trevor. And Simone. She's the one who notarized the documents. Turns out her notary license expired 2 years ago. So not only are the signatures forged, but the notarization itself is fraudulent. Can you charge her too? We're considering it. Her attorney has already reached out about a cooperation deal. If she testifies against Trevor, we might reduce her charges to a misdemeanor. I want her charged, I said. She wasn't just a passive bystander. She participated actively in the fraud. She lived in my house, treated my mother like a servant, and enjoyed the benefits of stolen money. She's just as guilty as Trevor. Ada Greenwood studied me for a moment. You're angrier at her than at him. I'm angry at both of them. But yes, her betrayal feels worse in some ways. She's a woman. She should have understood what it meant to exploit another woman, especially an elderly woman with no power to fight back. Instead, she participated gleefully. Well, whether we offer her a deal or not, the evidence against Trevor is solid without her testimony. But having her turn on him would make the case even stronger. Do what you need to do legally, I said. I trust your judgment on the strategy. I just want to make sure Trevor faces real consequences. He will. I promise you that. We continued going through evidence for another hour. Ada Greenwood wanted every detail, every document, every timeline verified. She was thorough and I appreciated it. One last thing, she said as I was preparing to leave. Trevor's attorney is going to try to paint this as a marital dispute. He's going to claim you're vindictive, that you're trying to punish him for the relationship with Simone, that the financial arrangements were legitimate. Let him try. The evidence speaks for itself. It does. But juries can be unpredictable. They sometimes sympathize with defendants, especially if the defendant is charming or seems remorseful. I need you to be prepared for that possibility. I am. But I'm also prepared to fight. Trevor underestimated me once. He's not going to get a second chance. I left the DA's office feeling energized rather than drained. The criminal case was moving forward. Trevor would face charges. Justice was happening. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. Attorney Bradford. Naomi, we have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Trevor filed for divorce this morning. He's claiming he's entitled to half of all marital assets, including the house. He's also requesting spousal support. I stopped walking. Spousal support? After what he did. He's claiming that he supported you emotionally during your marriage and that his career suffered because he was managing your properties and caring for your mother. He wants $25,000 a month in alimony. For a moment I could not speak. The audacity of it was breathtaking. He wants me to pay him for stealing from me? Essentially, yes. It's a common tactic in contentious divorces. He's trying to use the legal system to continue his theft under the guise of legitimate claims. What do? We fight it. You have a prenuptial agreement, correct? No. We got married quickly. I didn't think I needed one because I was careful about keeping things separate. Bradford sighed. That complicates things. Without a prenup, we'll have to argue that his actions constitute a waiver of any marital rights he might have had. The criminal charges will help with that argument. How long will this take? Months at minimum. Maybe a year or more if he decides to drag it out. And he will drag it out, Naomi. This is his last chance to extract money from you. He's going to use every delay tactic, every legal maneuver, Every dirty trick he can think of. Let him try. I have more resources than he does. Resources he'll try to drain. The longer this goes on, the more expensive it gets. That's part of his strategy. Make it so costly that you'll eventually settle just to make it stop. I won't settle. I thought you'd say that. Okay, here's what we do. We immediately file a response denying all his claims. We countersue for the stolen money. We present evidence of fraud to undermine any sympathy the judge might have for him. And we move fast to limit his ability to delay. Whatever it takes. That evening, I sat down with my mother and Candace to tell them about the new developments. He's really asking you to pay him? Candace said incredulously. After everything he did? Apparently. His lawyer thinks he can spin this as me being the bad guy. That's insane, my mother said. You're the victim here. That's what we're going to prove. But it's going to be a long fight. I'll testify, Ruth said immediately. I'll tell the judge exactly what he did to me. How he treated me. How he manipulated me. You may have to, I said gently. Are you ready for that? She nodded. I'm ready. He needs to be stopped. If my testimony helps do that, then I'm ready. Over the next few weeks, the case expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. As Bradford dug deeper into Trevor's activities, he discovered more fraud. Trevor had been running a side business, claiming to be a property manager for wealthy overseas investors. He had used my house as his business address. He had shown potential clients around my property, pretending it was his. He had collected fees and deposits that he never earned. He basically used your success to build credibility for a scam, Bradford explained during one of our many meetings. People saw the house, saw the lifestyle, and assumed he was legitimate. Then he took their money and did nothing with it. How many victims are we talking about? At least 6 that we found so far. Total losses of over $300,000. On top of the $200,000 he stole from me? Yes. Your ex-husband was running quite the operation. The FBI is now involved because some of the victims were from different states, which makes it federal wire fraud. The scope of Trevor's crimes kept expanding. Every time Bradford thought he had found the bottom, another layer of theft emerged. Credit cards opened in my name. Loans taken out using forged documents. Investment accounts he had raided and drained. The total losses are approaching $700,000, Bradford told me one afternoon. Across multiple victims. The federal charges alone carry a potential sentence of 20 years. Good, I said coldly. Let him rot. Bradford looked at me with something like concern. Are you okay? I know this is a lot to process. I'm fine. I'm angry, but I'm fine. Every new thing we discover just confirms that leaving him was the right choice. Destroying him legally is the right choice. Just remember, Naomi, revenge won't make you feel better in the long run. Justice will, but revenge is different. This isn't revenge, I said. This is accountability. There's a difference. But I knew in my heart that it was both. I wanted Trevor to face justice for what he had done. But I also wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain and humiliation he had inflicted on my mother. I wanted him to understand what it meant to have everything taken away. Maybe that made me a bad person. I didn't care. Some people deserve to suffer for their crimes. Trevor was one of them. The investigation continued to uncover new evidence. Simone's cooperation deal went through, and she provided testimony about Trevor's operations. She admitted that she had known the documents were forged. She admitted that she had helped Trevor maintain the fiction that he was a successful businessman. She admitted that she had treated my mother terribly because Trevor encouraged it. She's trying to save herself, Candace said when I told her. She's throwing Trevor completely under the bus. Let her. I hope the bus backs up and runs over him again. You're getting scary, Candace said, but she was smiling. I'm getting focused, I corrected. There's a difference. In my more honest moments, usually late at night when I could not sleep, I wondered if I was becoming obsessed with destroying Trevor. If I was letting the desire for revenge consume me in unhealthy ways. But then I would remember my mother in that gray uniform. I would remember the shame in her eyes. I would remember 2 years of isolation and abuse. And I would decide that no, I was not being unreasonable. I was being appropriately angry. And appropriate anger deserved appropriate action. The criminal trial was scheduled for 4 months away. The divorce proceedings would take even longer. But every day brought new evidence, new charges, new reasons to believe that Trevor would face real consequences. I was building an empire of evidence against him. And when it finally came time for him to face judgment, there would be no escape. He had built his life on lies. Now those lies were going to bury him. And I was going to stand there and watch it happen with a smile on my face. While the legal battles raged on, I turned my attention to reclaiming my life. The house needed work. Not just cleaning but a complete transformation. Every room held memories of Trevor and Simone, and I wanted them erased. I hired a design firm run by a woman named Amara who specialized in helping people refresh their spaces after traumatic events. She understood immediately what I needed. "You want this place to feel like yours again," she said during our first consultation. "Not like something that was stolen and recovered, but like something that always belonged to you." Exactly. We started with the master bedroom. The room where Trevor and Simone had slept felt contaminated. I had the carpets ripped out and replaced with hardwood floors. The walls were repainted in a soft cream color instead of the dark gray Trevor had chosen. The furniture was donated to charity and replaced with pieces I selected myself. My mother's room got a complete renovation. I converted one of the guest rooms into a proper suite for her, with a sitting area, a large bathroom with a walk-in shower, and French doors that opened onto the garden. I filled it with comfortable furniture in shades of blue and green, her favorite colors. "This is too much," Ruth said when she saw the finished room. "You don't need to spend all this money on me. Mom, you lived in a storage closet while Trevor and Simone enjoyed the run of this house. You deserve a beautiful space. Let me give this to you." She cried happy tears and hugged me tight. The living room was next. That expensive Italian leather couch Trevor had bought with my money got donated. In its place, I had comfortable sofas in a rich blue fabric arranged around a fireplace. Real artwork, pieces I chose because I loved them rather than because they looked expensive, went on the walls. Room by room we transformed the house. The kitchen got new appliances and fresh paint. The dining room got a new table and chairs. The home office where Trevor had run his fraudulent business became a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. "You're making this place beautiful," Candace said one day watching the transformation. "But are you sure you want to stay here? Don't you associate this house with everything Trevor did?" "At first, yes," I admitted. "But this is my house. I bought it with money I earned. I'm not going to let Trevor's crimes take that away from me. Instead, I'm going to take it back completely." The renovations took 2 months. During that time, I also focused on rebuilding my career. I had been away from Dubai for months now, and I needed to figure out my next professional move. I had been working as a senior financial consultant for an international firm before I left to deal with Trevor. Now I was considering starting my own business. I had the capital, the experience, and the contacts. What I needed was a plan. I spent evenings sketching out business models. Financial consulting for women entrepreneurs. I had watched too many women struggle to get fair deals, fair funding, fair treatment in the business world. I could help change that. Candace, who ran her own marketing firm, offered to help with the business plan. "You're going to be amazing at this," she said as we worked through the details one evening. "You have the skills, the network, and the passion. Plus, you understand what it's like to be financially betrayed. That gives you insight most consultants don't have." "I want to help women protect themselves," I said. "I want to teach them how to keep their finances separate, how to recognize red flags, how to build wealth that can't be stolen." "That's a mission," Candace said. "Not just a business. That's even better." 6 weeks after I kicked Trevor out of the house, I registered my business. Fletcher Financial Consulting. The name felt right. My name, my business, my rules. My first client was a woman named Isabel who had contacted me through a referral. She was going through a divorce and worried her husband was hiding assets. "My lawyer says I need a financial expert who can track the money trail," she explained during our first meeting. "Someone recommended you. They said you had personal experience with this kind of situation." "I do," I confirmed. "And I can help you find what your husband is hiding. Men like that think they're clever but they always make mistakes." I spent 3 weeks digging into Isabel's finances. Her husband had been systematically moving money into offshore accounts, hiding business income, undervaluing assets. Classic tactics. Tactics I recognized because they were similar to what Trevor had tried to do to me. By the time I was finished, I had documented over $400,000 in hidden assets. Isabel's attorney used my findings to secure a much better settlement than her husband had been offering. "You saved me," Isabel said, crying with relief after the case settled. "I thought I was going to lose everything." "You're not going to lose anything," I told her. "You're going to get what you deserve." Word spread. More clients came. Women who were being financially abused by partners. Women who needed help protecting their assets. Women who were starting businesses and needed guidance on keeping their finances secure. I hired 2 assistants to help manage the workload. Then I brought on another consultant, a forensic accountant named Terry who had left his corporate job to do more meaningful work. I spent 15 years helping rich people hide money from their ex-wives, he told me during his interview. I'm done with that. I want to help the people being victimized instead. You're hired. Within 3 months, Fletcher Financial Consulting had a full roster of clients and a waiting list. We were making a real difference in people's lives, helping them reclaim financial security and independence. My mother helped with the business too. She managed the office, scheduled appointments, and served as a compassionate presence for clients who were going through trauma. You're so good at this, Mom, I told her one day, watching her comfort a client who was crying after discovering her husband had bankrupted their family business. I understand what they're going through, Ruth said simply. I know what it's like to feel powerless. If I can help them feel less alone, then all of this was worth something. The business success felt good, but it was more than just professional achievement. It was reclaiming my identity. I was no longer just the woman whose husband stole from her. I was a successful business owner, a financial expert, a person who had turned her pain into purpose. Meanwhile, the renovations on the house finished. The final result was stunning. Every room reflected my tastes, my choices, my vision. When I walked through the door, I felt pride instead of anger, peace instead of violation. This is your home now, Amara said during the final walkthrough. Not his. Not anyone else's. Yours. She was right. The house felt like mine in a way it never had before. Because I hadn't just bought it, I had fought for it. I had reclaimed it from someone who tried to steal it. And that made it more valuable than any amount of money could measure. One evening, about 4 months after I had kicked Trevor out, I invited a few friends over for dinner. Not a party, just an intimate gathering. Ruth, Candace, and a few other women who had become close friends through the business. We cooked together in my new kitchen, laughing and talking. We ate in the dining room at the table I had chosen. We relaxed in the living room on furniture that was mine, not stolen. Look at you, Candace said, raising her wine glass. You survived. You rebuilt. You're thriving. We're thriving, I corrected, gesturing to my mother. Both of us. Ruth smiled. She looked healthy again. The haunted look had left her eyes. She had gained back the weight she had lost during those 2 years of abuse. She looked like my mother again instead of a shadow of herself. I'm proud of you, baby, she said. Not just for what you've accomplished, but for who you are. You could have been bitter. You could have let what Trevor did destroy you. Instead, you used it to become stronger. I learned from the best, I said, squeezing her hand. That night, after everyone had gone home, I stood in my living room looking at everything I had built. The beautiful house. The successful business. The relationships I had maintained and strengthened. The life I had reclaimed. Trevor had tried to take everything from me. He had failed. Not only had he failed, but I had built something better than what existed before. I was more successful now than I had been when I left for Dubai. I was more confident. More capable. More certain of who I was and what I deserved. The legal battles were still ongoing. The criminal trial was approaching. The divorce would take more months to finalize. But I had already won the most important victory. I had taken my life back. And no one was ever going to steal it from me again. I pulled out my phone and texted Bradford, "How's the case looking?" His response came quickly, "Strong. Very strong. Trevor's attorney is already making noise about a plea deal." I smiled. Trevor was beginning to realize he couldn't win. That all his lies and manipulations were catching up to him. That justice was coming whether he wanted it or not. "No deals," I typed back. "I want him to face trial for everything he did." "Understood. I'll let them know." I put my phone away and walked upstairs to my beautiful bedroom in my beautiful house. Tomorrow I had client meetings. New projects to manage. A business to run. A life to live. Trevor was becoming less relevant every day. Soon he would be nothing but a bad memory, a cautionary tale I could tell clients about the importance of protecting yourself financially. And then he would be nothing at all. Revenge wasn't just about destroying your enemy. It was about building something so strong, so successful, so undeniably yours that their existence stopped mattering. I was getting there. One day at a time. And it felt good. The criminal trial began on a cold Monday morning in November, almost 8 months after I had returned home to find my mother in that gray uniform. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Somehow the story had leaked to the press, and now it was being covered as a cautionary tale about marriage fraud and financial abuse. "Miss Fletcher, how do you feel about seeing your husband on trial?" a reporter called out as I climbed the steps with Bradford at my side. I didn't answer. Bradford had coached me to say nothing to the press until after the verdict. Let the evidence speak, he said. Don't give Trevor's attorneys any ammunition. Inside the courtroom, I took my seat behind the prosecution table. My mother sat next to me, Candace on her other side. We had dressed carefully for this moment. Professional but not flashy. Credible. Sympathetic. Trevor entered from a side door, accompanied by his attorney, a slick-looking man named Gerald Hobbs who specialized in defending white-collar criminals. Trevor had lost weight. His face looked drawn. He was wearing a suit that was nice but not too nice, probably chosen to make him look less wealthy than he actually was. For a moment our eyes met. I saw a flash of something in his expression. Fear maybe. Or anger. Or just the realization that this was really happening and there was no way out. I looked away first. He wasn't worth my attention. Judge Harrison presided over the trial. He was an older man with a reputation for being fair but strict. He had no patience for nonsense from either side. This is the matter of the people versus Trevor Fletcher, he intoned. The defendant is charged with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, identity theft, and grand theft. How does the defendant plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Hobbs said smoothly. The trial began with jury selection. It took 2 days to seat 12 people who claimed they could be impartial despite the media coverage. 8 women and 4 men, ranging in age from mid-20s to late 60s. I studied them carefully. Which ones would sympathize with Trevor's sob story? Which ones would see through his lies? ADA Greenwood's opening statement was powerful and direct. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about betrayal. Betrayal of trust, betrayal of love, betrayal of family. The defendant, Trevor Fletcher, systematically stole from his own wife over a period of 3 years. He forged her signature on legal documents. He drained her bank accounts. He turned her elderly mother into an unpaid servant while he lived in luxury. And he did all of this while his wife was thousands of miles away, working 70-hour weeks to build a better life for her family. She walked them through the evidence. The forged power of attorney. The bank account changes with signatures that didn't match. The property management scam that had victimized multiple people. The lavish lifestyle funded entirely by stolen money. The defendant wants you to believe this was a misunderstanding. That he had permission to manage his wife's finances. That he was simply helping out while she was overseas. But the evidence will show you that every claim he makes is a lie. This was not mismanagement. This was not a marital disagreement. This was calculated, systematic theft. And the defendant must be held accountable. Hobbs's opening statement took a different approach. My client is not a thief. He's a husband who made some mistakes. Yes, he managed his wife's properties while she was overseas. Yes, he made some financial decisions that, in retrospect, were not ideal. But these were decisions made within the context of a marriage. When Naomi Fletcher left for Dubai, she asked Trevor to take care of things. She gave him access to accounts. She told him to manage the property. And that's exactly what he did. It was a carefully constructed lie, making Trevor sound like a well-meaning but misguided partner instead of a calculating criminal. The prosecution wants to paint my client as a villain. But the real story is about a marriage that fell apart. About a wife who abandoned her husband for her career, then came back and decided to punish him for moving on with his life. This is not a criminal case. It's a divorce dispute that the prosecution has blown out of proportion. I felt my mother's hand squeeze mine. She was trembling with anger. He's lying, she whispered. I know, I whispered back. The jury will see it. The prosecution's case took 3 weeks to present. Witness after witness testified about Trevor's crimes. The bank manager explained how the forged documents had been submitted. The handwriting expert demonstrated how the signatures didn't match. The victims of Trevor's property management scam told their stories of being cheated out of thousands of dollars. Then Simone took the stand. She had been granted limited immunity in exchange for her testimony. She looked different now. No more expensive clothes or perfect makeup. She wore a simple gray dress and no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she was trying to appear as harmless and remorseful as possible. ADA Greenwood walked her through her relationship with Trevor. How they had met. How he had convinced her to move into my house. How he had explained away my mother's presence. Did Mr. Fletcher tell you who owned the house? Greenwood asked. He said it was his house. That he had bought it as an investment property. Did he ever mention his wife? Only to say they were separated and she was never coming back. Did you ever see documents that showed the house actually belonged to Miss Fletcher? Yes. After she came back, I saw the deed. I saw the mortgage statements. That's when I realized Trevor had been lying about everything. How did you feel about Ruth Fletcher, the defendant's mother-in-law? Simone looked down at her hands. I treated her badly. Trevor told me she was there as a housekeeper, that she was being paid to clean and cook. I believed him. I thought it was a legitimate arrangement. Did you ever question why an elderly woman was working as a housekeeper in what you thought was Trevor's house? I should have. But I didn't. I was too focused on enjoying the lifestyle Trevor provided. Hobbs's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to paint Simone as the real villain, someone who had manipulated Trevor and now was lying to save herself. You were sleeping with a married man, correct? Yes. You knew he was married. He said he was separated. But you knew he had a wife. A wife who was working overseas. Yes. And you had no problem moving into her house, spending her money, treating her mother like a servant? I thought it was Trevor's house. I thought it was Trevor's money. How convenient that you thought that. How convenient that you believed everything Trevor told you without question. And how convenient that now, facing criminal charges yourself, you've suddenly remembered all sorts of details that incriminate him. I'm telling the truth. You're telling the version of the truth that keeps you out of prison. Despite Hobbs's attempts to discredit her, Simone's testimony was damaging. She confirmed the forgeries. She confirmed the lies Trevor had told about me. She confirmed the way my mother had been treated. When she left the stand, I caught her eye. She looked away quickly, shame written all across her face. Good. She should be ashamed. Then it was my turn to testify. I had been dreading this moment, but Bradford had prepared me well. Be honest. Be clear. Don't let Hobbs provoke you into anger. Stay calm and factual. ADA Greenwood walked me through my story. My career in Dubai. My careful financial planning. My purchase of the house for my mother. The arrangements I had made before I left. Did you ever give your husband permission to move into the house? No. Did you ever add him to your bank accounts? No. Did you ever give him power of attorney? Absolutely not. I was very careful about keeping my finances separate. Why? Because I wanted to protect the assets I was building. I had specific plans for that money. I wanted to ensure my mother's security. Adding anyone else to my accounts would have complicated that. Did you trust your husband? I paused, considering the question. I thought I did. But trust shouldn't mean giving someone complete access to everything you own. I trusted him to be faithful. I trusted him to check on my mother. I didn't trust him or anyone with unrestricted access to my life's work. Greenwood showed me the forged documents. Are these your signatures? I examined them carefully, though I had seen them dozens of times by now. No. These are forgeries. How can you be certain? I pointed out the differences. The slight variations that only I would notice. The inconsistencies that the handwriting expert had confirmed. These documents are fake, I said firmly. I never signed them. Trevor forged my signature to steal from me. Then came the hardest part. Describing what I had found when I returned home. The condition of the house. The furniture bought with my money. Simone in her red robe. And my mother in that gray uniform. How did you feel when you saw her like that? Greenwood asked gently. Devastated. Furious. My mother is the strongest person I know. To see her reduced to that, wearing a maid's uniform in her own home, looking defeated, it broke something inside me. What did you do? I got her out of there. I took her to a hotel. And I called my lawyer. I knew I needed to fight this legally. I knew Trevor needed to face consequences for what he had done. Hobbs's cross-examination was exactly as unpleasant as I had anticipated. Miss Fletcher, you're a successful businesswoman, correct? Yes. You make a substantial income. I do. And yet you kept all that money to yourself. You didn't share it with your husband. I supported us both during our marriage. Trevor didn't work. Because you wouldn't let him. That's not true. Trevor chose not to work. He said he was looking for the right opportunity. That opportunity never materialized. You held the purse strings in the relationship. I earned the money. I controlled it. Yes. That must have been emasculating for him. I felt my temper flare but kept my voice steady. I don't think providing for your family is emasculating. I think most people would call it responsible. You abandoned him to go work overseas. I didn't abandon him. I took a job opportunity that would benefit both of us financially. For 6 years. Yes. During which time you rarely visited. You were too busy with your career. I visited twice a year and called every week. Twice a year, Hobbs repeated as if that proved something. How much time did you actually spend with your husband during those 6 years? as much as my work allowed. So your work was more important than your marriage. My work supported my marriage. It supported my mother. It built the life I'm now having to defend because your client stole from me. You came home and found your husband had moved on. And rather than accepting that your marriage was over, you decided to destroy him. I came home and found my husband had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from me and turned my mother into a servant. Those are crimes, Mr. Hobbs. Not moving on. You're vindictive. I'm seeking justice. There's a difference. The cross-examination continued for another hour. Hobbs tried every angle to make me look like the villain. The cold career woman who neglected her husband. The controlling wife who wouldn't share her wealth. The vindictive ex who couldn't accept rejection. But I didn't break. I answered every question calmly and factually. When he tried to twist my words, I corrected him. When he tried to provoke me, I stayed composed. Finally, Judge Harrison called a break. I stepped down from the witness stand feeling drained but satisfied. I had told my story. The jury had heard the truth. Now it was up to them. The defense case lasted only 3 days. Hobbs called character witnesses who testified about what a nice guy Trevor was. Friends who claimed Trevor had told them I gave him permission to manage my finances. No one who could actually prove Trevor's claims, just people who said he seemed sincere. Trevor himself didn't testify. Hobbs advised against it, probably because Trevor would have been destroyed under cross-examination. Closing arguments took a full day. ADA Greenwood summarized the overwhelming evidence of Trevor's guilt. Hobbs made a final desperate attempt to paint this as a marital dispute rather than criminal activity. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned with a verdict, I held my mother's hand so tightly I thought I might hurt her. On the count of fraud in the first degree, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the count of forgery? Guilty. On the count of identity theft? Guilty. Guilty on every count. All 23 charges. Trevor's face went pale. He swayed slightly in his chair. Hobbs put a hand on his shoulder to steady him. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Trevor was remanded into custody immediately. As the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. I met his eyes and felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Nothing. He was already irrelevant. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Miss Fletcher, how do you feel about the verdict? Justice has been served, I said simply. My mother and I can finally move forward. What message do you have for other women in similar situations? Protect your assets. Keep careful records. And never be afraid to fight for what's yours. The legal system works if you're willing to use it. Bradford put his arm around my shoulders and guided me through the crowd to our waiting car. Inside, my mother was crying. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. Almost, I said. Sentencing is in 2 weeks. And we still have the divorce to finalize. But yes, Mom. The hardest part is over. 2 weeks later, we returned to court for sentencing. Judge Harrison was not sympathetic. Mr. Fletcher, you betrayed your wife's trust in the most calculated and cruel way possible. You didn't just steal money. You stole time, security, and dignity from an elderly woman who had done nothing to deserve such treatment. You built a fantasy life on fraud and lies. And when you were caught, you showed no remorse, no accountability, no recognition of the harm you had caused. He sentenced Trevor to 15 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for at least 10 years. I hope, Judge Harrison said, that you spend your time in prison reflecting on the choices that brought you here. And I hope that when you're eventually released, you're a different man than the one standing before me today. Trevor said nothing. He just stood there blank-faced as the bailiffs led him away. As we left the courthouse for the final time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real, genuine peace. The legal battle was over. Trevor would spend the next decade at minimum behind bars. And I could finally, truly move forward. What now? Candace asked as we walked down the courthouse steps. Now, I said, we live our lives. The way we always should have been able to. And that's exactly what we did. The aftermath of the trial moved quickly. While Trevor began serving his sentence, the civil cases started falling into place like dominoes. Every victim he had defrauded filed lawsuits. Every asset he had purchased with stolen money was seized. His entire facade of success crumbled. The divorce proceedings, which had been on hold pending the criminal trial, resumed immediately. With Trevor convicted of fraud and theft, his claims for spousal support and community property were laughable. His attorney withdrew from the case, and Trevor was left defending himself from prison. The hearing was brief and decisive. Judge Morrison, the same judge who had granted me emergency possession of my house, presided. Mr. Fletcher, you're appearing via video conference from federal prison. Do you understand the proceedings? On the screen mounted on the wall, Trevor's face appeared. He looked worse than he had at sentencing. Prison was not being kind to him. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. He had aged years in just a few weeks. Yes, Your Honor. Your claim for spousal support has been denied. Your claim for community property has been denied. Miss Fletcher is granted a divorce on grounds of fraud and abandonment. Do you have anything to say? Trevor stared at the camera for a long moment. I thought he might apologize or at least try to explain himself one last time. Instead he just said, "No, Your Honor." Then this marriage is dissolved. Miss Fletcher, you're free to move forward with your life. And just like that, it was over. The marriage that had seemed so promising 10 years ago, the relationship I had thought would last forever, ended with a few words from a judge and a video call from a prison. I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not relief. Just a sense of closing a chapter that should have ended long ago. How do you feel? Bradford asked as we left the courthouse. Like I'm finally free, I said honestly. The financial restitution was more complicated. Trevor had spent most of the money he stole, and what remained was tied up in assets that needed to be liquidated. Bradford worked with a forensic accountant to track down every dollar. The luxury car Trevor had leased was repossessed. The furniture he had bought was sold at auction. The jewelry and watches and designer clothes were all liquidated. Even the ridiculous wine cellar he had installed was emptied and sold. We've recovered about 40% of what he stole from you, Bradford reported 2 months after the sentencing. The rest is gone. Spent on vacations and restaurants and general living expenses. We might recover some of it over time as he's required to pay restitution from prison, but that will be slow. I don't care about the money, I said. I care, but it's not about the money anymore. It's about the principle. He can't pay back what he stole, so he's paying with his freedom. That's enough. You're remarkably philosophical about losing almost $400,000. I've made it back, I said simply. My business is thriving. I'm earning more now than I was in Dubai. The money Trevor stole hurt, but it didn't destroy me. That's the real revenge. Meanwhile, Simone's life had also fallen apart. True to the prosecution's deal, she pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor and received probation instead of prison time. But that didn't save her from social and professional consequences. Her notary license was permanently revoked. She lost her job. Her family, who had been wealthy and well-connected, disowned her when the scandal broke. The life of comfort and luxury she had enjoyed while living in my house vanished overnight. I heard through Candace, who heard through someone else, that Simone had moved back to her hometown and was working as a waitress at a chain restaurant. Her parents refused to help her financially. Her friends had abandoned her. She was living in a small apartment, struggling to make rent. Do you feel bad for her? Candace asked when she told me this. No, I said without hesitation. She made her choices. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She participated actively in abusing my mother. She doesn't deserve my sympathy. That's cold. That's fair. Simone had every opportunity to walk away. She had every opportunity to do the right thing. She chose not to. Now she's living with those choices. The other victims of Trevor's property management scam also got some measure of justice. The FBI investigation led to the recovery of some of their money. Not all of it, but enough to make a difference. Each of them thanked me personally for pushing the investigation forward. If you hadn't fought this, one victim told me, Trevor would still be out there stealing from people. You saved a lot of others from going through what we went through. That meant more to me than any financial recovery. Knowing that my fight had protected others. Knowing that Trevor couldn't hurt anyone else. 6 months after the trial, I got a call from an unexpected source. A producer from a television network wanted to feature my story on a documentary series about financial fraud in marriages. We think your case is important, she explained. It shows how easily this kind of abuse can happen, even to educated, successful women. And it shows that fighting back is possible. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to be defined by what Trevor had done to me. But after thinking about it and discussing it with my mother and Candace, I agreed. If telling my story helps other women recognize the warning signs, I told the producer, then it's worth the discomfort of reliving it. The documentary filmed over several weeks. They interviewed me, my mother, Bradford, ADA Greenwood, even some of Trevor's other victims. They shot footage of my house, my business, my new life. When it aired 3 months later, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of women reached out to tell me their own stories. Many had experienced similar abuse. Others were currently going through it and didn't know how to get help. I started getting speaking requests, financial conferences, women's organizations, law schools. Everyone wanted to hear about my experience and how I had fought back. "You're becoming a voice for financial justice," Candace said after I gave my 5th speech in as many weeks. "This is bigger than your personal story now." She was right. What had started as my private battle for justice had become something more. A movement. A message. A rallying cry for women to protect themselves financially and fight back against abuse. I used the platform to advocate for stronger laws around financial fraud in marriages. I pushed for better education about keeping finances separate. I spoke openly about the importance of prenuptial agreements and independent financial planning. Some people criticized me. They said I was cold, that I was being too hard on Trevor, that marriage should involve trust and sharing. I didn't care. Let them criticize. I knew the truth. Trust was important, but so was protection. Love didn't mean giving someone the power to destroy you financially. Meanwhile, Trevor's life in prison continued to deteriorate. I didn't follow it closely, but occasionally news would filter back to me through Bradford's connections. Trevor had been attacked by another inmate. Trevor was in solitary confinement for his own protection. Trevor was trying to appeal his sentence and being denied at every turn. I felt nothing about any of it. No satisfaction in his suffering. No concern for his well-being. He had become irrelevant to my life. One day, about 8 months after his sentencing, I received a letter. It was from Trevor, forwarded through Bradford's office. My lawyer had opened it first, as per my instructions, to ensure it wasn't threatening. "It's safe," Bradford said when he handed it to me. "But you don't have to read it if you don't want to." I took the letter home and let it sit on my desk for 3 days before I finally opened it. The handwriting was shaky. The paper was cheap prison stationery. The words were carefully chosen. "Naomi, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I need to say this even if you tear this letter up without reading it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for what I did to Ruth. I'm sorry for all the lies and the theft and the manipulation. You were right about everything. I was a coward and a criminal. I deserve to be here. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to care. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too weak and too selfish to be the man you deserved. I hope you're happy. I hope you've built a good life. You deserve it more than anyone I've ever known. I'm sorry. Trevor." I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. "Was it an apology?" my mother asked. She had seen the letter arrive and knew who it was from. "Yes." "Do you forgive him?" I thought about that for a long time. Forgiveness was supposed to be healing. It was supposed to free you from anger and resentment. But I didn't feel angry or resentful anymore. I felt nothing. "I don't forgive him," I said finally. "But I also don't need to. Forgiveness would mean his actions still have power over me. They don't. He's irrelevant. The apology is irrelevant. All of it is in the past." "That's very mature," my mother said. "Or very cold," I replied. "I can't tell which." "I think it's healthy," she said. "You're not defined by what he did. You're defined by what you built afterward." She was right. I had built something beautiful out of the ashes of Trevor's betrayal. A successful business. A strong relationship with my mother. A platform to help others. A life that was entirely my own. Trevor had tried to destroy me. Instead, he had destroyed himself. That, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Not making him suffer. Not taking pleasure in his downfall. Just moving on so completely that his existence stopped mattering. I took Trevor's letter and put it through the shredder. I didn't need it. I didn't need his apology or his regret or his acknowledgement of guilt. I needed nothing from him at all. And that felt like freedom. 1 year after the trial, I stood in the conference room of my office building, looking out at the city. Fletcher Financial Consulting now occupied an entire floor of a downtown building. We had 12 employees. Over 200 clients. A waiting list that stretched months into the future. "Boss, your 3 o'clock is here," Terry said, poking his head into the room. "Thanks. Give me 5 minutes." I gathered my notes for the consultation. A new client referred by one of the women I had helped last year. Same story, different details. Husband hiding money. Wife fighting back. My job was to find the truth and help her protect herself. This work never got old. Every client was a person whose life I could help improve. Every case was a chance to prevent someone else from going through what I had experienced. The business had grown beyond my wildest expectations. We now offered comprehensive financial planning services, forensic accounting, divorce financial analysis, and business consulting for women entrepreneurs. Every service designed to protect and empower. My mother ran the community outreach program. She organized support groups for women going through financial abuse. She spoke at local events about her experience and recovery. She had turned her trauma into purpose just like I had. "You're thinking too much again," Candace said, walking into the conference room with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one and sat down in the chair across from my desk. "I'm reflecting. There's a difference. Reflecting on how awesome your life is now." Something like that. A year ago we were in the middle of the trial. I was so focused on destroying Trevor that I couldn't see past the next legal battle. Now look at us. You built an empire. That's what you did. "We built an empire," I corrected. "You've been with me every step." "True. So what's next?" "You've conquered financial consulting. You've become a media personality. You've helped hundreds of women. What's the next mountain to climb?" I smiled. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. I want to start a foundation. A nonprofit that provides free financial services to women who can't afford private consultants. Education programs. Legal fund assistance. Everything they need to fight back against financial abuse." "That's ambitious." "Everything I do is ambitious." "Fair point. When do we start?" "Already started. I've been meeting with attorneys about setting up the structure. I want to launch it next year." Candace grinned. "Of course you do. You know what your problem is? You never stop. You're always moving on to the next thing." "Is that a problem?" "No. It's why you're successful. But sometimes it's okay to just be. To enjoy what you've already accomplished without immediately jumping to the next goal." She had a point. I was always planning, always building, always moving forward. Maybe it was time to slow down and appreciate where I was. That evening, I went home to the house that was truly mine now. The renovations had been complete for months, but I still felt a little thrill every time I walked through the door. This was my space. My sanctuary. No one could take it away from me. My mother was in the kitchen, cooking dinner. The smell of her famous pot roast filled the house. "You're home early," she said, giving me a hug. "Wanted to have dinner with my favorite person. Flattery will get you an extra serving of dessert." We cooked together, talking about our days. Ruth told me about the support group meeting she had facilitated. I told her about the new client and the foundation plans. "You're doing so much good," she said. "I'm so proud of you. I learned from you, Mom. You never gave up even when Trevor was doing everything he could to break you. That's strength. That's what I try to channel every day." "We're both survivors," she said. "And we're both thrivers." After dinner, I went up to my home office to answer some emails. One caught my attention. It was from a woman named Brielle, one of my early clients. She had been going through a brutal divorce when she first came to me. Her husband had hidden millions in offshore accounts, and I had helped her uncover all of it. "Naomi, I wanted to let you know that my divorce was finalized yesterday. Thanks to your work, I got a fair settlement. But more importantly, I got my confidence back. You showed me that I didn't have to accept being treated badly. You showed me how to fight. I'm starting my own business now, following in your footsteps. Thank you for everything." I read the email 3 times. This was why I did what I did. Not for the money, though the business was profitable. Not for the recognition, though that was nice. For moments like this. For knowing that I had helped someone reclaim their life. Over the next few months, my life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I worked hard during the week, consulting with clients and building the foundation. Weekends were for my mother, for Candace, for the small circle of close friends I had built. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious. Men approached me at conferences and events, but I was cautious now. I knew the warning signs. I knew what real partnership looked like versus what manipulation looked like. I wasn't in a hurry to trust anyone with my heart or my assets again. "You're going to be single forever if you don't relax a little," Candace told me after I turned down another date from a perfectly nice lawyer who had asked me out at a networking event. "I'm fine with that. Being single is better than being with someone who might steal from me. Not everyone is Trevor." "I know. But I also know that I'm happy right now. I don't need a relationship to complete me. If the right person comes along, great. If not, I'm still living a full life." The foundation, which I named the Ruth Fletcher Foundation for Financial Justice after my mother, launched in April. We held a gala fundraiser that raised over $300,000 in one night. Business leaders, politicians, and celebrities attended. The media coverage was extensive. My mother gave a speech that night, talking about her experience with financial abuse and how important it was that women have access to resources to fight back. "I spent 2 years feeling powerless," she told the crowd. 2 years believing I had no choice but to accept the way I was being treated. But my daughter showed me that we always have choices. We always have power. We just need the right tools and the right support to use them." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The foundation started taking clients immediately. Women who couldn't afford private consultants. Women who were trapped in abusive financial situations. Women who needed help but had nowhere to turn. We provided free forensic accounting services. We connected them with attorneys who worked pro bono or on sliding scale fees. We offered financial education workshops and support groups. Within 6 months, we had helped over 50 women. Each success story felt like a small victory against the Trevor Fletchers of the world. I also continued speaking publicly about financial abuse. I gave a TED Talk that went viral, reaching millions of people. I wrote articles for major publications. I was featured on national news programs. "You're famous now," my mother teased one day after I was recognized by a stranger in the grocery store. "I'm notorious," I corrected. "There's a difference. Either way, you're making a real impact." She was right. The speaking engagements and media appearances were leading to real change. Several states were considering new laws to protect spouses from financial abuse. Banks were implementing better verification procedures for account changes. Courts were taking these cases more seriously. Trevor's crimes had inadvertently become a catalyst for systemic change. That felt like poetic justice. I occasionally wondered about Trevor, though I tried not to. According to Bradford, who still had connections in the system, Trevor was not doing well in prison. He had been moved to protective custody after another assault. He was spending most of his time alone, cut off from other inmates. "Do you want more details?" Bradford asked when he told me this. "No. I don't need to know. He's serving his sentence. That's enough." "Are you sure?" "I don't want to intrude on your space." "Intrude? Baby, I want you here. We've lost too much time already. Let's make up for it." So I moved back into the house I had bought 6 years ago. My room was waiting for me, beautifully decorated, nothing like it had been when Trevor and Simone had occupied it. It felt like coming home in a way that nowhere else ever had. Living with my mother again was surprisingly easy. We had our own routines but enjoyed sharing meals and evenings together. We watched movies and cooked together and talked about everything and nothing. The business continued to grow. By the end of year 2, Fletcher Financial Consulting had expanded to 3 cities. The Ruth Fletcher Foundation was helping over 200 women annually. I had published a book about financial protection in relationships that became a bestseller. Everything I had built was solid, secure, and entirely mine. No one could take it away. No one could steal it. I had learned from my mistakes and built something stronger. I dated occasionally, but I was comfortable being single. I had learned that being alone was better than being with someone who didn't deserve you. My standards were high now, and I made no apologies for that. One day, about 2.5 years after the trial, I received a call from Bradford. "Trevor is up for a parole hearing," he said. "He's not eligible for release, but he can request a review of his sentence. He wants me to tell you he's not going to fight for early release. He's accepting his full sentence." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he asked me to. He wanted you to know he's not going to cause any more trouble. That he's genuinely remorseful and just wants to serve his time quietly." "Okay. Thanks for letting me know." I hung up feeling nothing. Trevor's remorse or lack thereof was irrelevant to my life. He was a closed chapter. The epilogue to a story I had already moved past. That evening, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet. The evening was cool. I found myself standing in front of the house, looking at it from the outside. This house had been a dream when I bought it. Then it had become a nightmare when I discovered what Trevor had done to it. Now it was a dream again, but a different kind. A better kind. A dream I had earned through fighting and rebuilding and refusing to give up. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the house. Then I texted it to Candace with the caption, "Home." Her response came immediately, "Damn right it is. You earned every inch of that place." As I walked back inside, I passed through the living room where my mother was reading a book. The kitchen where we cooked together. The office where I ran my business. The bedroom where I slept peacefully every night. Every room represented something I had reclaimed. Every space was evidence of my strength. Every corner held memories of recovery and growth. Trevor had tried to take all of this away from me. He had tried to steal my money, my home, my mother's dignity, my sense of security, He had tried to reduce me to a victim. He had failed spectacularly. Not only had I gotten everything back, but I had built something even better. I was stronger now than I had been before. More successful. More purposeful. More certain of who I was and what I deserved. That night I sat at my desk and wrote a letter. Not to Trevor but to myself. A letter documenting everything I had accomplished. Everything I had overcome. Everything I had learned. Dear Naomi, 2 years ago you thought your life was over. You thought the betrayal would break you. You were wrong. You fought back. You gathered evidence. You hired the right people. You trusted the legal system even when it was frustrating and slow. You protected your mother. You built a business. You helped hundreds of women. You changed laws. You made a difference. Trevor tried to destroy you. Instead, he destroyed himself. His crimes put him in prison. His lies caught up with him. His choices cost him everything. And you? You're thriving. Remember this feeling. Remember this moment. When things get hard again, and they will because life is hard, remember that you survived the worst betrayal imaginable and came out stronger. You're enough. You've always been enough. And no one can ever take that away from you. Love yourself. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, next to the apology letter Trevor had sent from prison. I kept both of them as reminders. Trevor's letter reminded me of where I had been. My letter reminded me of how far I had come. 3 years after the trial, I ran into someone from Trevor's family at a charity event. His cousin, a man I had met a few times during our marriage. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me. Naomi, I didn't expect to see you here. It's a public event. I'm allowed to be here. Of course, I wanted to say I'm sorry for what Trevor did. Our family is ashamed of him. That's not your burden to carry. He made his choices. Still, what he did to you and your mother was inexcusable. I want you to know that not everyone in our family is like that. I never thought they were. Trevor's crimes were his own. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward but civil. When he left, I felt a strange sense of closure. Even Trevor's family recognized what he had done was wrong. Even they had disowned him. I had won so completely that there was nothing left to fight for. As the years continued to pass, Trevor became less and less relevant. He was just a cautionary tale I told at speaking engagements, a footnote in my success story, a reminder of what I had overcome. My life was full of good things now. Work that mattered. Relationships that nourished me. Purpose that drove me forward. Every day I woke up grateful for what I had built. Some people might say I should forgive Trevor. That holding on to anger was poisonous. But I wasn't holding on to anger. I had let it go years ago. What I held on to was the memory of what happened. The knowledge of what people are capable of. The determination to never let anyone treat me or anyone I care about that way again. That wasn't bitterness. That was wisdom. On the 4th anniversary of that horrible homecoming, I hosted another party. Not a birthday this time, but a celebration of the foundation's success. In 4 years we had helped over 600 women. We had influenced legislation in 12 states. We had changed lives. My mother gave a speech again talking about healing and hope and the importance of fighting back. 4 years ago I felt powerless, she told the crowd. Today I help other women find their power. That's not just recovery. That's transformation. After the event, as we were cleaning up, Candace pulled me aside. You know what the best revenge is? She asked. What? This. All of this. The successful business. The foundation. The happy life. The fact that you're thriving while Trevor rots in prison. That's the best revenge. She was right. I had spent so much energy in those early days wanting Trevor to suffer. Wanting him to feel pain and regret. But the real revenge was simpler than that. The real revenge was living well. So well that his existence stopped mattering. So well that thinking about him felt like a waste of time. So well that his crimes became nothing more than an unfortunate chapter in a much larger, much better story. I had my justice. Trevor was in prison, his life destroyed by his own choices. But more importantly, I had my joy. I had rebuilt my life into something beautiful. Something meaningful. Something entirely my own. And that, I realized, was what victory really looked like. Not the destruction of your enemy, but the building of something so strong and good that your enemy becomes irrelevant. Trevor had gambled with my life and lost everything. I had fought back and won everything. The ending was happy not because he suffered, but because I thrived. And I intended to keep thriving for the rest of my life. As I stood in my beautiful home, surrounded by people I loved, doing work that mattered, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. Trevor had tried to steal my future. Instead, I had built a better one. That was justice. That was joy. That was the happy ending I had earned. And it was only the beginning.
Thanks for watching!